Safety ring? What's that? Now, I don't know how to. Okay. It says safety ring, so I don't understand that. Now, how you watch this? If there's a safety. Safety ring. I don't know what that means. Okay. So here goes nothing. Pop this in the machine and see if it plays it. If it doesn't play it, then I'm gonna have problems.
History, as seen through the eyes of Ken Burns, is more than just a collection of stories about what's happened in the past. It's a chance for us all to reflect on how to build a stronger tomorrow. We share in his vision, and we're proud to support his efforts. Funding for this program is provided by members of the Better Angels Society, dedicated to helping Ken Burns tell America's story, including the Dana A. Hamill Family Charitable Trust and Robert and Beverly Graffoni. The Arthur Vining Davis Foundation, dedicated to strengthening America's future.
Shit.
History, as seen through the eyes of Ken Burns, is more than just a collection of stories about what's happened in the past.
It's a chance for us all to reflect on how to build a stronger tomorrow. We share in his vision, and we're proud to support his efforts.
Funding for this program is provided by members of the Better Angels Society, dedicated to helping Ken Burns tell America's story, including the Dana A. Hamill Family Charitable Trust and Robert and Beverly Lapone. The Arthur Vining Davis Foundation, dedicated to strengthening America's future through education. The National Endowment for the Humanities, exploring the human endeavor. The Rockefeller Foundation. The Wallace Genetic Foundation. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Let me tell you how it was. I don't care who describes that to you. Nobody can tell it any worse than what it was. And no one exaggerates that. There is no way for it to be exaggerated. It was that bad.
It was just unbelievable. It'd blister your face. It would put your eyes out. Well, I guess I can't describe it. It was just constant, just that steady blow of dirt.
As far as you can see, it was dust storm coming right towards you. This giant wall was just coming towards you. And you still had the feeling, whether you would admit it, that something was going to run over you and just crush you.
It was almost surreal. The dust. There's nowhere you can run. You can try to get out of it, but it's as if it follows you. You can't escape it. Looking back on it, it carries a feeling of, I don't know the word exactly, of being unreal, but almost being evil.
It was a decade-long natural catastrophe of biblical proportions, when the skies refused their rains, when plagues of grasshoppers and swarms of rabbits descended on parched fields, when bewildered families huddled in darkened rooms while angry winds shook their homes, pillars of dust choked out the midday sun, and the land itself, the soil they had depended upon for their survival and counted on for their prosperity, turned against them with a lethal vengeance. It was the worst man-made ecological disaster in American history, when the irresistible promise of easy money and the heedless actions of thousands of farmers, encouraged by their government, resulted in a collective tragedy that nearly swept away the breadbasket of the nation.
It's a classic tale of human beings pushing too hard against nature and nature pushing back. And it's an American bubble story too, like stocks and like real estate. We think that everything goes up and will come down, and we can defy gravity. And that's what we did here.
The Dust Bowl belongs on the list of the top 3, 4, 5 environmental catastrophes in world history. Those catastrophes took place over hundreds and even thousands of years of deforestation. We've created a world-class environmental disaster in a matter of 40 to 50 years.
It was an epic of human pain and suffering, when normally self-reliant fathers found themselves unable to provide for their families, when even the most vigilant mothers were unable to stop the dirt that invaded their houses from killing their children, when thousands of desperate Americans were torn from their homes and forced on the road in an exodus unlike anything the United States has ever seen. But it is also the story of heroic perseverance, of a resilient people who somehow managed to endure one unimaginable hardship after another, to hold on to their lives, their land, and the ones they loved.
What kind of place was this where children couldn't go outside? Where the air itself could kill you? Where the sky showered down this suffocating blackness that could erase the sun at midday? Who could do that? And we didn't plan this. We didn't set out and say, let's ruin the second greatest ecosystem in North America. It was a result of a whole bunch of things that are just innate to human beings.
April 28th, 1908. Here I am, away out in that narrow strip of Oklahoma between Kansas and the panhandle of Texas. I wish you could see this wide, free western country with its real stretches of almost level prairie covered with the thick, short buffalo grass, the marvelous glory of its sunrises and sunsets, the brilliancy of its starlit sky at night. Caroline Henderson.
From the time she was a young girl growing up in Iowa, Caroline Boa Henderson dreamed of having a piece of land she could call her own. Even when she went east to Mount Holyoke College, where she studied languages and literature, her senior class prophecy predicted that her future would be found somewhere on a western ranch. In 1907, the year of Oklahoma's statehood, she followed that dream to the newly created Texas County, where she staked out a homestead claim and moved into a one-room shack, 14 feet by 16, which she called her castle. A year later, she married Will Henderson, the lanky Kansas cowboy she had hired to dig her well. They soon had a daughter, Eleanor, and Will built an addition to their home. Now they were close to gaining title to the farm, where they raised broomcorn, millet, and maize, turkeys, chickens, and a few cattle, putting what little cash they earned into improvements, particularly a new windmill to draw up water for their animals, house, and half-acre garden. To bring in extra money, Caroline began submitting articles about life on the plains to magazines in the East. She wrote for Ladies' World, where a column entitled The Homestead Lady became a popular feature and eventually contributed to the Atlantic Monthly, the nation's most prestigious publication.
Out here in this wilderness has come to me the very greatest and sweetest and most hopeful happiness of all my life.
You're living with the wind. It's not something that's constant, but it blows more than it doesn't blow. The times that it blows really hard may not be that often, but there's just a constant breeze. Feels and then the wind.
Nah, don't talk.
You feel it, you sense it from living here.
That country was so flat, you could see for just miles. Used to say that it wasn't a fence between there and the North Pole. The God, it was good grass country. Man, it was perfect.
It's said that buffalo grass would hold the moisture, so if you went down 12 inches, you would find moist earth. And I remember us digging down, and the earth was moist down there. It was beautiful soil. It was beautiful soil.
Well, nature took several million years to find a solution to these unstable soils, these high winds, these turbulent weather conditions, which was the grasses. They're an evolutionary adaptation. They work pretty well for the most part. They have survived here for millions of years. Our agriculture hasn't been here for much more than a century.
The Great Plains stretch from Canada to southern Texas. From the Missouri River
That's
to
Texas.
the Rockies,
It's Tornado
a
Alley.
few trees, infrequent rains, and constant winds. One of the earliest American explorers called it almost wholly unfit for cultivation and uninhabitable by a people depending upon agriculture. The Plains Indians considered it home. The short grasses that covered the treeless expanse sent tangled roots 5 feet below the ground, forming a dense sod that could withstand the region's periodic droughts and violent weather extremes, nurturing the vast herds of buffalo who grazed in numbers beyond counting. After the bison were eliminated and the Native Americans had been driven onto reservations, cattlemen took over in what was called the beef bonanza. But severe winters in the 1880s killed off their herds, and the bonanza went bust. Homesteaders came next, swarming onto land once considered unsuitable for crops because it averaged less than 20 inches of rain a year. Unscrupulous promoters promised that the very act of farming would increase the precipitation. Rain follows the plow, they said. The severe drought in the 1890s proved them wrong. Counties that had tripled and quadrupled in population in less than a decade emptied just as quickly. Then, in the early part of the 20th century, Congress enlarged the original Homestead Act, enticing farmers to settle on some of the last unclaimed and most marginal sections of public land in the nation. The newcomers, nearly all of them white, came from Europe, where land was unavailable, and parts of the United States where it was too expensive. In the southern plains, many of them converged on a narrow strip of Oklahoma that bordered 4 other states: Kansas, Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado, a formerly lawless and ungovernable place called No Man's Land, the place where Caroline Henderson would stake her future.
Farming here often reminds me of the man who, when asked to embark upon some rather doubtful business venture, replied that if he wanted to gamble, he would prefer roulette, where the chances were only 32 to 1 against him.
Southern plains are high risk area because they're neither desert nor a humid forest or humid grassland. They're on the edges of vulnerability. We've got an area that the rainfall is less than 20 inches a year. In some years, you get enough rainfall, you can make a good crop. The next year, you get half that amount of rainfall. It is one of the riskiest areas in the world for agricultural production.
Well, the farm men and women of the Southern Great Plains are the greatest next-year people in the world. And they really live their lives with 3 little words: if it rains. If it rains, the dust would settle. If it rained, the drought would be broken. If it rained, the wheat crop would grow. If it rained, things were good. If it didn't, they were a next-year people.
Not long after Caroline Henderson moved to No Man's Land in 1907, the Southern Plains entered a wet period, and the pace of settlement quickened. Real estate syndicates began buying big ranches for $5 an acre and carved them up into smaller parcels for sale at 3 times the price. Railroad companies did the same thing with the vast tracts they had been given by the government. Special excursion trains brought prospective buyers to the region by the thousands. Salesmen assured them that none other than the former chancellor of the University of Kansas had determined that the climate was undergoing a permanent shift. Precipitation was increasing while the winds were slowing down. Another expert declared that removing the cover of prairie grasses allowed more rainfall to penetrate the soil. town sprang up overnight. In Cimarron County, Oklahoma, the developers of Boise City sold house lots to buyers who didn't even bother to come for an inspection.
Boise City is named for the French word le bois, tree. There were no trees. This is in Panhandle of Oklahoma. There were no trees. They advertised it as having artesian wells, big main streets where bankers could live, and stately elms and maples. There were no trees. There was no water. There were no houses. But they sold lots here. And this is one of the few times in American real estate where real estate promoters have actually been convicted, sent to federal penitentiary.
Ooh.
One of them rotted and died in that penitentiary after the real estate scam that was Boise City.
Oklahoma, one railroad brochure bragged, grows better corn
Damn!
or Minnesota, better cotton in Mississippi or Alabama, and better swine than anywhere.
That's big stuff. That's big. That's big vegetables and fruit.
In western Oklahoma and throughout the southern plains, the focus was almost exclusively on wheat.
Or two.
When the Great War broke
Or
out in
one.
Europe, German blockades cut off access to Russian wheat. In the United States, farmers mobilized to feed the Allies. Under the slogan, "Wheat will win the war," prices were set at $2 a bushel, twice the previous rate. In 5 years, more than 11 million acres of virgin soil were an area twice the size of New Jersey, converted from grasslands to wheat fields.
Wow.
When the war ended, wheat prices dropped, but the plowing and planting only increased. It would come to be called the Great Plow-Up.
If you had been a wheat farmer in the 1920s, it would have been relatively easy to make money. You needed less land to grow wheat than you needed to run cattle, so the investment was less. I had a farmer tell me that you just put seed in the ground and boom, you had a crop.
It was really advertised all over the nation as the place to come and live in the 20s. Oh, it was green, level, and pretty. And the grass was beautiful. We had tall grass, and I remember running barefooted along in this ditch, which was big clods of cool, damp ground.
Imogene Glover's family had moved to a 3-room house on land in Texas County, Oklahoma, not far from Caroline and Will Henderson. Her father raised cattle, turkeys, and especially wheat.
He was a gambler, but I think every farmer is a gambler. They have to gamble that what they're putting into the ground is going to grow and produce, and they'll get better off. They always feel that way if they're a farmer.
In the southwestern corner of Kansas, Edgar Cohen had taken over 160 acres from a failed homestead. At first, he moved his wife, Rena, and their children into a 1-room, 10 by 12-foot dugout that extended only 2.5 feet above the ground, with small windows to let in a little light. As the family grew, Edgar added more rooms, then an above-ground entrance big enough to double as a kitchen. By scrimping and saving, he was able to acquire 160 more acres and build a barn for his livestock.
Oh, it was real nice. Summertime was pretty lonely. Always cooled off good at night. A lot of times we would sleep out underneath the trees or something like that. It was a real good atmosphere. Of course, there's always been the arid country, you know, it never has been lots of rain, but it was a really ideal place to raise a family.
For the first time in their family history, most of these people owned a piece of dirt. They were Scots-Irish who'd been kicked around that old Confederacy. They were so-called poor white trash. There were these Germans from the Russian steppe. There were Latinos who came from the South. There were folks that never owned anything. And they had wonderful years, 10, 12, 15, where everything was right.
Modern machinery made wheat farming more efficient and still profitable, even at prices of $1 per bushel. Powerful gasoline tractors, pulling broad arrays of disc plows, turned the sod with ease.
In the 1920s, there was a concerted movement at the highest levels of American society to turn agriculture into an industrial model, to make every farm into a factory. Well, you could never have plowed up 30-some million acres of land, of course, a wooden plow or even a steel plow. Tractors were going all night long with headlights burning to plow up this land to get it into production.
In southeastern Colorado, Calvin Craybill's father hoped to make a life for himself and his family, raising horses and cattle. But to get ahead, he took a job driving a tractor on other people's land.
He worked nights. Somebody else worked days, and so he worked nights. He knew that buffalo grass was the natural turf of that country, and it was grazing country. He didn't stay with the tractoring thing too long because I think it just got his heart. He couldn't stand it. And I think even though he needed the money, he quit doing it. He just couldn't stand to do it. He was really a stockman, and he knew it was all wrong, and he paid the price for it later.
In previous years, farmers had used a plow called a lister that split the soil in two directions and dug a deep furrow that caught and held blowing soil. Now, the most commonly used plow was called a one-way, which was cheaper and tore through the sod at a faster rate.
In the late 20s, the crops were good, the prices were good, and so everybody, the thing to do was to break out everything and get it in wheat. And practically everybody did that.
This boom was one of the great classic American bubbles. We've had a lot of them in our history, and this was one. They had these suitcase farmers who would get off the train, and they called them suitcase farmers because they were just dandies from the city. They weren't farmers, and they had their suitcases, and they'd go out and they'd claim their square mile because they enlarged the Homestead Act. Then they'd get someone to plow up the grass, throw some of this turkey red wheat into the ground, and then go back to town and come back in the spring and harvest this thing. And it was a fool's game. You could make a lot of money.
The suitcase farmers have hired the preparation of large areas of land all around us, which no longer represent the idea of homes at all, but just parts of a potential factory for the low-cost production of wheat.
During the last 5 years of the 1920s alone, another 5,260,000 acres of native sod, an area the size of New Hampshire, was turned over on the southern plains. The soil, the federal agency confidently proclaimed, is the one indestructible, immutable asset that the nation possesses. It is the one resource that cannot be exhausted, that cannot be used up.
The Great Plow-Up had going for it ample rainfall for a period of 10 or 15 years. And it just kept encouraging more and more. People thought, as they think again and again, that we turn the corner on climate here. We can see far into the future and it's all wet. They knew that there had been severe droughts in the 1890s, but people forgot about those. They thought that was the past, this is now, and this will be the future.
A handful of old-timers, especially the cattlemen who had been through those droughts, weren't so sure. To them, the southern plains were a grassland, and the sod should never be turned.
Van White, who was a half Apache, half Anglo cowboy living in the Texas Panhandle, said to his son, who asked him what was the problem, he said, "Look at it, wrong side up. It's wrong side up."
A few days ago, I rode to the store for the mail. Coming home, I saw the whole country transformed in the sunset glow. All the brown prairie turned to gold. I could feel once more the lure of this great lonely land, waiting with its stores of fertility all untouched for those who shall one day learn to meet its demands, to give to it their patient thought and labor.
Among Caroline Henderson's neighbors in Texas County was the family of Harry Forrester. He had grown up in Arkansas and eastern Texas before filing on a homestead in no man's land, where he and his wife raised 9 children. As times improved, his dreams had expanded, especially for his 5 sons.
And one of his goals was to leave as a bequest to each of his sons a section, that is a square mile, of good arable production land, which is something that he felt would guarantee their having a good living, a good life. That was his goal.
In 1928, to fulfill his dream, Forrester leveraged the homestead he already owned with a mortgage to buy even more wheat-growing land near Boise City.
He had used all his property and all his lands and all he had accrued from 1906 to 1928. Because of his dream, he essentially put it all at risk. And ultimately it proved to be a bad time to make a move.
So stock
On
crash.
October 29th, 1929, the day that would be remembered as Black Tuesday,
Stock
the
crash.
stock market crashed on Wall Street, puncturing a speculative bubble that had been building throughout the 1920s. By the end of the year, the financial panic began to spread to other parts of the economy, throwing 1.5 million Americans out of work. A year later, that number would triple, and the nation descended into the Great Depression. But back in no man's land, the future still looked bright. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce pronounced the Southern Plains as one of the most prosperous areas in the entire nation. An advertisement in the Boise City News imagined a Manhattan-style skyline with the prediction, "Soon you will have your own Empire State Building right across from Kirby's Cash Grocery."
The first 2 years, they thought it didn't affect it, that it was back east. Oh, well, you know, that was Chicago, that was New York, it wasn't here. This won't happen to us.
We had the best crop that we had had in 1929. That's when the market was great. And the people that did plant wheat had a better year than they'd ever had. And they just thought they'd get wealthy. It was a great time. And everything was looking up.
In the panhandle town of Follett, Texas, Trixie Travis Brown's father decided times were right to start a new business and build a new house.
He and his dad and brother opened a hardware store in Follett. That was a thriving little town. We had a main street that had businesses on both sides of the street. After my sister was born in 29, we moved in to the new house. It was great. Things seemed to be going well for my dad, for Grandpa.
Most of what people knew about the misery gripping the rest of America, they learned from reading newspapers and watching newsreels at the Palace Theater in Boise City or the Mission Theater in Dalhart, Texas. But as the Depression deepened elsewhere, prices of farm commodities collapsed, plunging all of rural America into crisis. In 1930, wheat dropped from $1 to 70 cents a bushel.
Ooh.
Now, the federal government begged farmers to reduce their acreage. Instead, farmers decided if they couldn't make as much money per bushel, they would simply harvest more bushels. So they plowed up more land, 500,000 more acres in the counties around No Man's Land. The whole area, one agricultural agent said, had gone wheat mad.
The answer to
Damn.
farmers' problems on the Great Plains is basically always more.
8 plows? Or is it
If you're hurting,
8 to 10 plows?
crop prices are low, you produce more to make up. If you're doing well, but bushel prices are high, you produce more. I mean, it's always more production is the answer to the problem. And so in 1930, despite low prices, farmers were producing more wheat than ever before.
This big plow was the final surge that came after wheat had crashed. If you had 10,000 acres and you had taken out a bank loan to service your 10,000 acres, suddenly you're getting only half what you got the year before. The only way you could cover your nut was to double the amount of land you plowed up. So it sent them into the fields for this frantic last-minute effort to turn the land.
It was a recipe for economic disaster in the sense that they were producing an enormous glut of wheat that didn't have a market. It was a recipe for disaster in that if a drought comes along, they are lying there vulnerable with so much land that has been exposed.
It snowed and rained that winter, and the spring of 1931 brought adequate moisture. By harvest time, the winter wheat was shoulder high, and farmers realized they had a bonanza on their hands.
I have never seen a more beautiful harvest. One of the best wheat crops this country has ever produced in our 24 years of farming.
Over the years, Caroline and Will Henderson had increased their holdings to 640 acres, a square mile. They had purchased mechanized equipment to replace their horses and made steady improvements to their property. They now had a real house with a full basement, 5 rooms on the first floor, and a big unfinished room on the second. They had an indoor bathroom, but as yet no running water inside the house, and had purchased a telephone. But when the bumper crop of 1931 was harvested, there was no one to buy it. Grain elevators overflowed, and giant dunes of wheat were piled out on the open ground. Prices had already collapsed to 25 cents a bushel,
Ooh.
roughly half of what it cost the farmers to grow it. We're too big to cry about it, Caroline wrote, and it hurts us too much to laugh.
I remember my father saying that his banker had told him that prices certainly wouldn't go any lower than 95 cents a bushel, which compared to what it had been in the 1920s was really low. And my dad used to laugh ironically and say the next day it dropped to 23 cents a bushel.
Ooh.
60 cents in one day. It wasn't until the price of wheat dropped so drastically that we really felt the depression out here.
Like so many of their neighbors, Pauline Hodges' parents believed the situation would not last for long. They were, after all, next year people.
Two midnights in a
little
jug.
After noontime, on January 21st, 1932, a dust cloud appeared outside of Amarillo, Texas.
Wow.
Dust storms weren't uncommon in the area, but this one rose 10,000 feet into the air, carried winds of 60 miles per hour. The local weather bureau didn't quite know what to make of it, calling it awe-inspiring and most spectacular. Even old-timers said they'd never seen anything like it in their lives.
Scared us to death. We didn't know what to think. We was at home. Dad was gone, looking for cattle. Mom and sister and I, we was outside. We looked at that. We just didn't know what it was going to be. First started way off in the real dark, but the closer it got brown. And when it hit, 30 minutes, you could, it was just like midnight. Middle of the day, it was just like midnight, with no stars. It was dark.
Boots McCoy's family lived in Texas County, 6 miles west of the Hendersons. He and his big sister, Ruby Pauline, huddled with their mother, who was pregnant.
It'd be still, be as calm as it could be. And then when that dust got there, wham, it would hit you. And it was just a roll. It was scary. It scared the heck out of us. Mother would pray about it, you know. And us kids, when we were little, we'd stay pretty close to Mom, I guarantee you.
The storm passed quickly, but that winter of 1931-32 was uncommonly dry. So was the spring that followed. The fierce winds common to the season began picking up sand and soil from the bare fields again and moving it across the landscape. The Weather Bureau began classifying the storms by their severity. Some storms, taking the coarser, sandier soils, moved along the ground for a few miles before disappearing.
Dust devils.
Others created a light haze in the sky. The worst ones reduced visibility to less than a quarter mile. No Man's Land had 14 of those in 1932.
The dust storms was the most fearsome looking. But as far as damage, I would say the sandstorms did more damage to our land and our cattle and so forth. You don't hear much about the sandstorms, but we had a lot of those. We didn't get very dark, but they were a nuisance to be out in. It would just pepper you like sandy hitting you. It'd be very abrasive. And they might last 2 or 3 days. One time my mother marked 21 days on the calendar that we had sandstorms every day.
Well, I had to run get the chickens in when we'd see them coming. And if I didn't get back to the house or to the cellar in time, my bare legs would really feel that sand and grit. But I knew the way. I think I could run blindfolded from the chicken house to the house and then to the cellar.
By 8 o'clock, that wind would be in dirt. And by the time I would walk from that house to that road, which was as far as clear across the street out there, my legs would be blistered. It would be, that dirt would be coming and hitting there so hard.
Wow.
In the midst of the relentless storms, Boots McCoy's mother went into labor.
Uh-oh.
It turned out she was carrying twins. She named them Roy and Troy. But they were in trouble from the very beginning.
They lasted, best I could remember, about 12 hours. And the doctor just couldn't save them. And when we buried them, the neighbors built a coffin. And one of them went to J.C. Petty's store and got some number 12 shoe boxes. And we put some cotton and put the boys in that and put them in that coffin. That's the way they was buried.
Many a time I have found myself tired out from having tried, unconsciously and without success, to bring
It's
the
sad.
distant rain clouds
Your brothers died
nearer
off before
to
you
water
can.
our fields. I'm beginning to see how worse than useless is this exaggerated feeling of one's own responsibility. To understand a little the thought of someone who wrote long ago, "He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap."
For Caroline and Will Henderson and all the other farmers in the area, the harvest of 1932 was a double disaster. Prices for wheat plummeted even lower than the previous year. There wasn't much of a crop to harvest anyway.
Judging by any standards that the world would recognize, we should have been further ahead if we could have spent the year in sleep.
That fall, farmers went back to the fields and planted winter wheat for next year.
People still toil amazingly and make a conscious effort to keep cheerful. But it seems to me that the effort grows more apparent. Behind the characteristic American nonchalance, one detects a growing anxiety, especially about the coming winter.
You kept thinking that tomorrow things will change. So you kept doing what you were doing. You thought, well, maybe there's some things that we can do that will be a little better than the way they are. They couldn't live without hoping that things were going to change for the better. We always had hope. Next year was going to be better. And even this year was going to be better. We learned slowly. And what didn't work, you tried it harder the next time. But you didn't try something different, you just tried it harder. The same thing that didn't work.
By sacrificing the small reserves we had held against the days of drought and disaster, we have succeeded so far in keeping on a cash basis. We have disconnected the telephone, stopped the daily paper, substituted cheap lye for washing powder so that my hands are rough and uncomfortable. But of all our losses, the most distressing is the loss of our self-respect. How can we feel that our work has any dignity or importance when the world places so low value on the products of our toil?
Things were even worse for Caroline's neighbors, the Foresters. Harry Forrester's crop had withered in the drought, and what little wheat he had managed to harvest brought in only 17 cents a bushel.
Wow.
The land he had purchased near Boise City turned out to have a prior claim on its title and was taken from him. The mortgage on his original homestead, which he had used to buy the extra land, could not be paid, and he lost it too.
Lost
He
everything.
was forced to move his wife and 9 children to rented land. Harry Forrester's dream of amassing enough property to give each of his 5 sons 640 acres was in shambles. Now he would struggle simply to keep his large family fed and warm through the winter.
One thing, we would do chores. Of course, doing chores for a youngster like me was riding along on the wagon and picking up cow chips, coming in and piling them behind the house so that we would have fuel for the fires. And of course, they don't smell at that point in time, unless you happen to get one that's a little bit fresh.
Ew.
At the beginning of this whole situation, most people are thinking this is a short-term problem. We've seen droughts before. We've seen dust storms before. We've had high winds before. And you wait till next year. And everyone assumed that next year things would be better. And then the next year they assume things will be better. And it doesn't get better.
Throughout the United States, things were getting worse. Tens of thousands of banks and businesses had failed. In just one day, 1/4 of the entire state of Mississippi went under the auctioneer's hammer.
Wow.
From San Francisco to New York, thousands of Americans were reduced to living in shanty towns called Hoovervilles, after the president they had come to blame for everything. That November, voters took out their despair and anger on Herbert Hoover and elected Franklin Delano Roosevelt to lead the nation through the crisis. The normally Republican counties of the Southern Plains went Democratic. Roosevelt, they hoped, would at least try to help. But even a president couldn't control the weather. There was no rain at all in Cimarron County, Oklahoma in March of 1933. The agricultural agent there predicted that at best, farmers might harvest 4 bushels of winter wheat per acre versus the previous yields of nearly 30. And now the dust storms were becoming more frequent. Instead of the 14 storms of 1932 classified as the worst, there were 38 in 1933. One storm in April lasted 24 hours.
Dang.
You could hardly avoid looking to the west to see if you could see this rim of dust that was rising on the horizon. It was earth-colored, way far away, beginning to rise, and the next day perhaps it would be bigger and come quicker and higher. And then suddenly you were just engulfed. It was overhead, and you couldn't see the sun. And that's when it was a really bad day. And day after day, it would be that way. Dark, black, scary. The experts could tell where the dust came from by the color. New Mexico had one color, and Oklahoma, coming from another direction, had another color. And they would say, well, we're enjoying Oklahoma today. Well, we're getting visited by all of the Mexicans today, and so forth.
The big dust storms were fine particles of soil. Others were sandier blows that blew along the highways at low elevation, and it could take the paint off your automobile or your house, like sandpaper you rubbed against it. But the ones that were the most terrifying were the ones that were based on these very fine particles that rose up into the air 7,000 to 8,000 feet.
Wow.
And a boiling wall of dirt coming at you with gale force, 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. These are the black blizzards that frighten people so much during those periods.
When one of these dusters would approach from afar and they would see it for the first time, it was like a mountain range. Because some places the storms were 100 miles, 150 miles, 200 miles wide, and a mile or more high. So imagine driving on the flat land and looking off and seeing a mountain range itself starting to move. Daylight itself would be obliterated. Someone told me it was like 2 midnights in a jug.
One particularly bad storm we had, it was in the daytime, and it rolled in, and it was so black that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So we all gathered in the kitchen, the whole family. We lit the kerosene lamp, and that didn't help very much. And Mother had tea towels that were made out of flour sacks because we were also in the Great Depression. But we just took them and draped them over our head, down the face, just a little head. You couldn't see anything. You sat there and, you couldn't talk or visit with anybody very much. But that wet towel would catch the dust. And sometimes those towels were pretty black by the time we took them off.
It gets so bad you couldn't even see to drive. You couldn't see the sides of the road with your lights on. You couldn't tell whether you was on the road or on the sides or where you were.
Sometimes we were caught in the house or in the car, and we just sat there until it all blew over. If this was brown dirt blowing all around the car, and we just sat there until it kind of cleared up enough you could see the road to go on to get to the house. And it was gritty and dirty, and you had to wash your mouth off whenever you got in the house so you weren't eating dirt. If you go out and pick up a handful of dirt and stick it in your mouth, that's just the way it would feel.
One of the things that happened just before a duster hit was there was this amazing static electricity in the air. And so people used to carry a chain in their car to ground the electricity. So you didn't drive anywhere without having this chain. You'd then throw out, drag it along the ground to ground the electricity. The radio would go out, your electrical stuff was short. And every person would talk about how you literally couldn't shake another person's hand before one of these dusters because the static was so strong. It was the kinetic energy that was in the air just before a duster hit.
I can remember feeling in my hair. It just kind of like your head tingles or something, Your hair just kind of wiry.
More dust and the longer the ride, the higher the charge. Until finally it gets such a powerful charge that if you reach out to touch a car, the electricity will jump out about 6 inches to meet you and knock you like flat on your butt. But it wasn't always like that. Don't forget this is a storm, which
needs to have a beginning and an end. And in between storms, couldn't be more beautiful. These skies were crystal blue, and clouds were those fluffy white summertime clouds without a drop of water in Pittsburgh. But I can still remember my father looking up at the sky and praying, well, it's a rain. Actually, it never was. These weren't rain clouds, and they go with it.
In the times between storms, the farmers and townspeople tried their best to carry on with their lives. But the land they called home was being rearranged before their very eyes.
Just dirt, piles of dirt around anything like the fence rows or something like a plow implement or anything out in the yard. It might be nearly covered up with dirt. Anything loose banked up around something or blew away.
It would drift up the side of the barns, so you could walk up on the roof of the barn. You just walk up like you had a ladder there, but it would be dirt.
The storms had pushed dried up Russian thistles, tumbleweeds, across the open ground by the hundreds of thousands. Wherever they piled up against barbed wire fences, they created eddies in the wind, and the dirt accumulated.
Thistles got in the fence, and then the sand got in the thistles. So consequently, what cattle was still alive walked over the fence. Every place there was a fence, you could almost walk over most of it.
Where the dirt and sand hadn't piled up, the land had been swept clean of topsoil.
It was bare, it was hard. You could take a broom and sweep it just like you could a wood floor. It was hard, just like cement.
So you could walk out on your farm and instead of finding dirt, you found this hard pan layer on the top. Impossible to cultivate. Your dirt would be in somebody else's farm or a county away.
The dust was so bad that the cattle died. They found small herds of cattle that were just filled up with dirt in their lungs and their noses. I can remember seeing our cows' noses that were just mud on the end, where they tried to breathe and couldn't.
They died of suffocation. Whatever wildlife is up to died of suffocation. But animals also simply wandered away, not knowing where they belonged, and would climb over these dust drifts and be lost. So it was really devastating for livestock in terms of loss of life.
Housewives nurtured their gardens with well water, but the abrasive winds, the shifting dirt, even sometimes the charge of static electricity in the air often killed the vegetables their families were counting on.
A storm would come and there would be absolutely nothing left of it. And Mother tried her best to keep that from happening. She would dig post holes to plant tomatoes in so that the wind wouldn't cut them off until they got bigger and stronger to where they might have some tomatoes then. And she dug deep rows to put anything in. And of course, sometimes they would fill up with dirt.
After surveying the residents of Meade, Kansas, a reporter calculated that the average damage from a single storm was $25 per home. What couldn't be measured, he said, was the loss of disposition of the housewives.
My mother was very clean. Her house was always clean, and she tried to keep us kids clean. She would take all of her curtains down one day and wash them and hang them back out. The dirt storm would come in that night, and they were just like they were before she washed them. And that went on day after day after day. And once in a while, you would hear of some woman that just couldn't take it anymore, and she had committed suicide. It blew that dirt into the attic of the house. And a lot of times, when we would get up in the morning, you could look up at the ceiling, and if there was a split or between boards or whatever,
that dirt would just be coming right down like this on the table. And when we'd get up in the morning, a lot of times there would be, say, from an inch to 5 inches of dirt just piled up like that. And you clean that off and you eat. You eat the dirt if it's there. If it isn't, well, you good.
When we set the table, we always set the plate upside down, glasses or cups, whatever it was, upside down. And still, I think you turn them over and shake and look at them before you put anything in them. My family thinks that I'm kind of stupid if I get a glass out of the cabinet, I rinse it out before I drink out of it.
When we would go to bed at night, sometimes a dust storm would come in. And when we got up the next morning, our covers would be completely covered with dust. And the only clean place on our pillow would be where our head is laid.
Dust to eat, and dust to breathe, and dust to drink. Dust in the beds and in the flower bin, on dishes and walls and windows, in hair and eyes.
Yeah, clean the president. Yeah, clean the picture of the president.
And throats. To say nothing of the heaped up accumulation on floors and windowsills after one of the bad days. This wind-driven dust, fine as the finest flower, penetrates wherever air can go.
Cottontails.
The wind and dust weren't enough to deal with. Hordes of jackrabbits, driven by hunger, now invaded what pastures, crops, and gardens were left.
They ate everything green there was. The farmers had killed off the tigers, and that upset the natural order of things, and the rabbits just exploded, and they would eat anything green they found, and they would eat your garden up.
There'd be thousands of rabbits. They'd eat everything. Eat the bark off the fence post. Dad put new post up on our place when he done it, and it was cedar post that had bark on it. And they ate that bark off of it.
To combat the invasion, entire communities began organizing rabbit drives.
We'd advertise it with flyers all over the place in advance. And on Saturday afternoon, corner with Joe Smith would be rabbit drive, please come, bring a map.
Things were even worse for Caroline, and now the dust storms were becoming more frequent.
Rabbits hopping in it.
Okay, we're almost halfway done. This might be a pee real quick. Actually, I need to see what Zusho's doing before. I need to see what Zusho's doing before I finish up this documentary. I want to see what Zusho said because this is. I want to see what Zusho said because a get a worse future. What that means. Yeah, sure. Okay, it made no sense. That's why I have an Xbox that uses discs. Still, what time is it right now? It's 5:30, so let's see if KBX will be on later. Let's finish this up.
Give out, and then more kids get in and fighting them, but they kill them by the thousands.
Two cubs and rabbits to death, which was an unsightly thing, and it was a horrible thing to do. They would scream, and I can still hear rabbits, the noise they'd make. I live on one, and that was enough for me.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't kill a rabbit.
In the early spring of 1934, a snowstorm blanketed no man's land. The flakes mixed with airborne dirt were darkened. Locals called it a snuster, but at least it was a little moisture. In the Texas Panhandle, a light rain fell. Many people thought the drought had broken. The goose hangs high, a local newspaper reported. Farmers are going down the furrow with brighter days in sight and a song in their hearts.
And I remember one time it rained and we were all just thrilled, and the children went out in the streets and barefoot and danced in the rain and let the rain fall on their tongues. We were just ecstatic, and the mothers called that it was time to come in for supper, and nobody would go in. So finally the neighbors all brought supper to the front porches, and we had supper on the front porches and danced in the streets. It was wonderful. And we thought maybe the tide had turned, but after that, there came the dust again.
1934 would turn out to be even drier and hotter than the years before. Part of a nationwide drought that affected 46 of the 48
Wait a minute. 39?
The temperature had already reached 100 degrees in North Dakota, where the drought was a year older. Parts of Nebraska where temperatures hit
Michigan, same thing.
118 were already blowing. Then, on May 9th, a massive weather front moving eastward began picking up loose soil from Wyoming and Montana, then Nebraska and the Dakotas. Ultimately, 350 million tons of it, lifted tens of thousands of feet in the air. Carried by high-level winds, it crossed Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and as it passed over Chicago, it deposited an estimated 12 million pounds of dust, 4 pounds for each resident of the city.
Wow.
On May 10th, it darkened the skies over Detroit, Cleveland, and Buffalo. By the morning of the 11th, the storm enveloped the eastern seaboard from Boston to Savannah.
Georgia.
In New York City, streetlights were turned on at midday. The thick haze obscured tourists' views of Central Park from the top of the Empire State Building, and the ship delayed its entry into the harbor because the captain had trouble seeing the Statue of Liberty. In Washington, D.C., dust descended on the National Mall, even sifted into the White House, where President Roosevelt was holding a press conference promising relief to the drought-stricken Great Plains. The next day, ships 300 miles from the coast reported dirt falling onto their decks.
People were shocked and they began to, for the first time, to ask questions. What is happening out on the Great Plains?
Though it originated on the northern plains, Easterners referred to it all as Kansas dust, and many of them quickly had suggestions about how to stop it from blowing across the continent. One company proposed covering the plains in concrete with holes carefully placed for planting seeds, while a steel manufacturer in Pittsburgh thought its wire netting might work better. The Barber Asphalt Company of New Jersey estimated it could spread its product over the land for $5 an acre. A woman from North Carolina suggested that shipping junk autos west would simultaneously beautify her state while stopping the wind erosion on the plains.
Well, Easterners in particular, anyone who didn't live on the Great Plains, had no idea of the scale of this problem or how to go about solving it. So their first idea was basically to cover the Great Plains somehow, cover these soils, bringing rocks from the Rocky Mountains, I guess rolling them down the mountainside, anything to cover this area. They had no idea that they were talking about 100 million acres.
President Roosevelt and his Secretary of Agriculture, Henry Wallace, had ideas of their own, from encouraging farmers to plant fewer crops to finding ways to stabilize the loose soils through better plowing techniques. But those programs were still in their infancy. No one knew if they would work. During a stop in drought-ravaged North Dakota that summer, Roosevelt admitted as much. "I would not try to fool you by saying we know the solution to the crisis," the president said. "We don't. But what I can tell you from the bottom of my heart is this. If it is possible for us to solve the problem, we are going to do it." Some of the people lining the route of his motorcade held up signs that noted how Roosevelt had already ended prohibition. "You gave us beer," the placard said. "Now give us water." Roosevelt acknowledged their message and responded that beer part was easy. A series of rains fell shortly after the president's visit and helped ease the drought on the northern plains. People there called it Roosevelt weather. But farther south, there was no such relief. While the outlines of the worst hit area would shift over the years, sometimes broadening or narrowing, by the summer of 1934, the government had officially identified the geographic heart of the dust crisis. It was near Boise City in Cimarron County, the western tip of Oklahoma, in no man's land. 1/3 of the county's land was blown. Even some pastures of native buffalo grass that had not been plowed had been buried under drifts of dirt and sand, some 10 feet high. A few of Roosevelt's other New Deal programs, aimed at easing the hunger and joblessness of the Great Depression, had now reached the southern plains. In Cimarron County alone, needy residents received 2 tons of smoked pork, 16 tons of beef, 17 tons of flour, and 33 tons of coal through a surplus commodities program. 1/4 of the county's population now depended on New Deal jobs. But none of that addressed the main calamity. "We are getting deeper and deeper in dust," the Boise City News reported. The same was true in all the other surrounding counties, in Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and the rest of the Oklahoma Panhandle.
By 1934, the environmental catastrophe on the Great Plains was pretty clear. It would have At that point, classified as one of the worst environmental disasters in American history already.
We are trying to hope that the worst is over. Yet today, after we thought the drought had been effectively broken, we had another terrible day of violent wind, drifting clouds of dust, and Russian thistles racing like mad across the plains and piling up in head-high, impassable banks. We feel as if the administration is really making a sincere effort to improve general conditions, but they have a tremendous task, made harder, of course, by all who cling tenaciously to special privileges or opportunities of the past.
That summer, farmers gathered at the Palace Theater in Boise City to hear details on a new government program designed to stabilize beef prices by reducing the surplus of cattle across the country. In the Great Plains, it was also meant to deal with the problem of animals wasting away for lack of adequate pasturage. Already, homesteaders like Caroline and Will Henderson had resorted to harvesting Russian thistles to feed their cows. Some ranchers were grinding up yucca cactus or burning off the nettles of prickly pears in an effort to give their cattle something, anything, to eat.
Daddy said we don't have enough money to buy food for the cattle. But if we can cut thistles and stack them, there's more food value in that than nearly anything. And our job was to tramp those thistles down. Now, if you want a bad job, that's one. And those thistles get down your pant legs, into your shoes, those little stickers. And you can stand it about so long, but pretty soon you gotta stop. Get out a sticker.
To encourage farmers and ranchers to cull their herds, the new government program would pay them up to $16 a head for a cow healthy enough to be shipped to a packing house, where it would be slaughtered and canned for distribution to the poor. Cattle deemed unfit for consumption would bring a minimum of $1 a head, but would be immediately killed and buried. Government agents fanned out across no man's land to make the purchases, oversee the shipments, and where necessary, pay men to put their herds under the drifting soil. Nationwide, the program was a success. $111 million was spent to purchase 8.3 million
That's not bad.
cattle, and prices were stabilized. In Cimarron County, the government purchased 12,499 head of cattle in 1934, paying $164,449 in much-needed cash to local ranchers. Desperate as they were for some income, it was a bitter pill for many to swallow. Harder still on their children.
What they did was they took a bulldozer and made a mammoth ditch, and drove all the cattle down in there. And then there were men above with rifles, and I would say maybe 10 or 12 rifles, and they shot the cattle. My father, when our cattle was driven into this ditch to be shot, he said, "There's a little calf. Can I butcher that calf for food for us?" They said, "No, they all have to be destroyed." I'll never forget, till a dying day, standing there as a little boy. I was probably 8 or 9 years old when they started shooting those cattle. And it's a sight to this day that the average person couldn't stand it. As a little kid, it was very rough, because that was our stock. And you got some money for it, but that didn't matter. They killed the stock.
And they said, if you can get cowboys to get those cattle together, we'll just rush them and they'll fall in that ditch, and then we'll kill them and cover them up. And Daddy could hardly. I'm sorry.
That's just wrong.
Could hardly do that.
It's like, it sounds like Chernobyl.
And I never will forget. My brother and I was down there and watched them shoot those little kids, and we could hardly stand it. But that's what they did.
It's like Chernobyl. It's like Chernobyl vibe. This is Chernobyl vibes.
Anybody who had lived on the southern plains for any length of time knew that there were periodic droughts, knew that the wind blew in the spring, knew that there were going to be dust storms. What's different about the 1930s is how long the drought lasts. They were always battling against hope because you would see that maybe there was some rain on the horizon, but it would fall on somebody else's field and not yours. You would see some clouds gather, and you would hope that.
Today's Tuesday. I gotta go to the casino today in the game.
Hope
Wednesday, I can't go to the casino in the game.
Constantly disappointed.
My dad could tell if it was going to be a really bad day by looking out the back door at the sunrise. And if the sun was red, he'd say, oh, it's going to be a bad day. That discouraged me. Even when I was little, if I heard him say that.
By 1934, property values around Boise City had declined by 90%. More than half of the landowners were delinquent on their taxes. Each week, the local paper carried notices of upcoming sheriff sales of farms being put on the auction block because of unpaid mortgages. Every family, every farm, every business was affected. The telephone company that had opened in the rural part of no man's land went under. The Palace Theater shut its doors until enough people persuaded the owner to reopen. They needed movies to help them take their minds off their troubles. No one knew what the next calamity would be or when the hard times might end. When he lost yet another crop to the drought, Pauline Hodges' father found himself hard up against his mortgage.
I think he must have been scared to death because he had relatively little education. Farming was all he knew how to do, all he'd ever done. And to look out and see that field, solid dust, mounds of dust. But he'd say, oh, Dora, it's going to get better. It'll get better. And he would talk about his banker and liberal, and he'd say, oh, Mr. Igo is going to let us continue for a little while longer. He keeps saying, oh, Paul, it won't get any worse. He carried us for probably 3 years beyond what he should have, keeping the hope that we were going to get rain and times were going to get better. If we just had a crop, we could pay off that mortgage. Finally, the bank was desperate, and in the winter of 34-35, they foreclosed.
They moved into a vacant 3-room house in town, and her father managed to find a government job building roads that helped keep the family fed.
He made $3 a day to start with, and when he became foreman, he made $5. But even as young as I was, I remember seeing the change in him from the self-confident person that he'd been to somebody who was really defeated. And frankly, he never recovered.
Over in Follett, Texas, Trixie Travis Brown's father and grandfather were trying to hold on to their hardware business. Among those having trouble paying their bills were a pair of brothers, valued customers, and friends.
The two of them came into the hardware store and talked to Grandpa and said, I don't know what we're going to do. We're wiped out, and we cannot pay this bill that we owe you right now. And Grandpa could see how desperate they were. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll carry this. You'll be just fine. We'll get our money. And it was no time before the tragedy happened. One of them, he had a family with children who were in school with me. He hanged himself at home. This sort of agony was going on.
Soon enough, Trixie's father and grandfather couldn't pay their debts either.
the hardware store went bankrupt. We lost it, and the bank took the house, and the bank foreclosed on Grandpa Travis. And he lost his cattle, he lost his section of land, he lost his home, and he lost his health.
Oh.
In Basine, Kansas, a doctor took his own life. He told us just a few days ago that money was an impossibility now, the local paper reported. And the letters indicate that financial troubles are the cause of his act. In Dodge City, a 13-year-old boy, said to be worried that his parents couldn't afford his school books, committed suicide. Devastated by his investment losses, a Cimarron County doctor killed his wife and then himself. In Boise City, Millard Fowler was fresh out of high school and ready to build a future. He had fallen in love with the daughter of a man who until recently had been one of the area's most prominent businessmen. Fowler and his sweetheart decided to get married, but first he wanted to get her father's blessing. Fowler found his future father-in-law sitting in his car, in front of the family home.
When I opened the door, I didn't know what he was up to. I knew he was in the car, but I didn't know why. But when I opened the door, saw that light pointing at his head. I opened the door and got in the seat beside him and took that rifle and unloaded it. Without any conversation, as I remember. But I finally got around and asked him if it'd be all right if we got married. And he finally said yes. A couple of months later, he committed suicide.
Wow. Try to stop it from happening, and it happened. That sucks.
In 1935, the number of black blizzards doubled around No Man's Land, and many of them struck in the first 4 months. In that time, 7 different
April 10th, 35. Wow.
visibility to 0 in Amarillo. Dodge City, Kansas reported only 13 dust-free days.
Wow.
One single storm destroyed a quarter of the wheat crop
30s.
in Oklahoma.
30s during the Great Depression, 1930s.
It blew out 5
Late 28 to the 30s.
Carried off twice as
I mean,
much dirt as had been
it went one dust bowl, one storm ahead, started in the Midwest, started in the Tornado Alley area, went all the way to DC.
This is more frightening than winter.
It was not over. Wow.
It was in that sense like a
It was over 90 years ago. Dust Bowl was real bad because during the Depression stuff, and that was in the Kansas area. It was in Kansas, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, over by Tornado Alley. This is Tornado Alley area. So yeah.
During a black blizzard in February, a farmer's car went off the road 2 miles from his home, and he got out to walk the rest of the way. He never made it. In March, a 7-year-old boy near Hays, Kansas, got caught alone in a storm.
Menards didn't exist yet. This is 1930s. This is 1930s. Menards didn't exist yet.
Farther west, a 9-year-old wandered off alone in the same
There's
storm.
no
He was tangled in barbed
only place that existed back in that day would be White Castle and A&W. That's it.
The city to Dalhart, Texas, was forced to stop when its passengers complained they were choking.
This is over 100 years
To
ago.
let the dust settle.
This is not over 90 years ago.
Dirt on the floors and seats.
Camera was around. Yeah, camera was around.
In Garden City,
Camera existed,
Texas, the
but it was called Five and Dime at the
store
time.
sold out of goggles. Then the train delivering a new supply was delayed by a dust storm.
Kmart was founded in 1899.
Kansas, a
Yeah,
judge
Kmart.
said,
Sears, Kmart was around, but no fast food places existed yet.
without even the horse seeing her.
Yeah, Kmart was a Five and Dime. Kmart was around. I'm not sure about hotels. A lot of stuff was around mom and pop shops. Oh,
That spring, a wave of illnesses swept across the southern plains. With
I don't.
symptoms
I mean,
of
this is the 1930s. Okay, this is 100 years ago.
nausea, chest pain.
This is also this is about 100 years ago.
People called it dust pneumonia.
Oh,
The soil they had
Arby's?
turned over during
No,
the
I mean,
plow-up
only existed back in the 1930s was White Castle and A&W. That's it. There's no restaurants existed. White Castle existed, but that was about it. Arby's didn't exist yet. No, Arby's didn't exist yet. No McDonald's, no Burger King. Sort of worked. I'm waiting for a new part. I'm waiting for another part tomorrow to come in. I have the orange part. I have to get my last part tomorrow. I mean, the only fast food. There was no fast food restaurant. The fast food restaurant at the time around was would be White Castle and A&W. Everything else didn't exist yet. I mean,
That's just small enough for particle to get into the lungs.
oh, like, yeah, it kind of works, but I got the wrong equipment. I got the wrong box. No, I don't work the popcorn until September.
There were days when my mother put a dust mask over my face to keep me from choking and gasping. And it frightened me.
What the hell?
As I remember, I got over that, and I thought it was uncomfortable, and I hated it. But it was better than coughing and choking.
Yeah, I ordered the wrong box.
You just couldn't get a good breath.
I ordered a box. The box is I ordered the wrong box.
What I've heard more than anything else. Boy, put your mask back on. I hated to wear them. I could get a better breath without it than I could with it, I thought.
Yeah, I ordered the wrong
Red
box.
Cross issued a call for 10,000 more masks. It wasn't nearly enough.
Just like Corona.
More people got sick.
Just like Corona.
Because he was 60 miles away. And
Yeah,
so the
wrong
folks
box.
doctored us themselves.
I got the box. I mean,
So I was doctored with kerosene and lard.
eh.
Dye that was rubbed on your chest.
Ugh.
And for cough syrup, you had sugar with drop 2 kerosene in it.
Ugh.
And that was your cough syrup.
Kerosene and sugar?
My temperature got real high.
I don't-
And they knew that it was probably pneumonia. There was no doctor near us, but I kept getting worse. And it was hard
Dust
to
pneumonia.
with the dust.
Dust. You got dust. You got lung disease from dust.
Maureen White's parents decided their only hope was to move their daughter to relatives farther east, away from the ever-present dust. Her mother would go with her, but her father needed to stay and try to manage
This
the farm.
dust storm is bad.
The day they came to get me, the dust was terrible.
Yeah, a lot of people committed suicide during the Great Depression / dust
And I
storm.
remember Dad wrapped me in a blanket and he carried me to the car. He told me that when he carried me to the car, he thought he would never see me alive again. But from then, I don't remember anything.
At her relative's home, her temperature finally went down, but her coughing wouldn't stop. Doctors saved her with an operation that drained the fluid in her inflamed lung.
Oh, lung drain. Oh,
On the couch, and I looked into the kitchen, and the door was swinging open, and you know there's a little crack that you could see through. I was looking, and I saw my dad. No words continued.
Stereos existed back in the 1830s. Stereos were started back in the 1830s.
Back in no man's land, the Red Cross declared a medical crisis.
Stereos existed back in the
Wards were opened wherever-
Stereos was founded back in 1930s.
including the basement
Half the county, this whole entire county was founded in the 1830s. Colon 32, Minden 32, 31, Centerville 13, Colon 30, I think 37, 36 here, 36, 37 here, and 3 rivers. 31 was Centerville, 32 was Colon. Oh, all 3 girls died from dust pneumonia. Oh man, that's sad. I think 36, 37, 1836, 1837, I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm not from here. I'm from Colon, so I'm not really sure. I think 36, 37. I mean, I have to look into it.
By 1935, Edgar and Rena
I think
Cohen
36.
had 8 children. 6
Around the time
years
Michigan was
later,
founded.
Cohen had started building a proper home for his family. But because of depression, construction had ended at the basement.
No clue.
Covered it with a sheet iron roof and moved.
I'm not sure who founded Three Rivers. I'm not really sure.
It was larger than their old home. Space for 2 bedrooms.
I never looked into that.
A bedroom that served as a kitchen, dining room.
Like I said, I only know Colon, Michigan history. I only know Colon history, not. I only know Colon history, and I only know about. That's it. Not much else.
Ralph and Rena Marie, their only daughter, who quickly became the family favorite.
Aww.
Rena Marie was our oldest sister, and she was so precious to us because the folks had been trying for a girl all the time, but always come out with boys. But she was frail, but she was a pretty little girl.
She was just the sweetest.
Oh, the Cole brothers.
You'd ever seen. She was smaller than Ralph.
I'm not going to the casino for a while. I might go to GTA 5 casino, but that's about it.
But of a night, since Mama had a lot of work to do with 7 boys and portion on the board and stuff, she needed to rest. So Rena Marie would sleep close to me. And I'm glad I was able to do it. I spent an awful lot of
In other news, the Prem Casino has survived. Shutdown is what's happened in Nevada. Heard a company bought the casino. That's good.
Richard and the 2.5-year-old twins.
Yeah.
One night,
The reason
Rena Marie's
there's
temperature
there's a reason why. It was because of Mr. Blackstone. That's why Harry Blackstone. He liked Colon. He loved Colon because it's the halfway point between Detroit and Chicago. And at the time, there was a train line that went from Colon to Chicago. At one time, there was a train line. It went to Detroit through Chicago, went right through Colon. So that's why he preferred Colon, and he liked it there because it was quiet, calm, and that's why it became the magic capital of the world. He loved living there. I mean, if it wasn't for that's why Colon's magic capital of the world. It's because of Harry Blackstone, or I should say, Harry Bouton. I mean, I did a short story on Colon for school one year. And it was pretty good. And I actually did some digging and found out that something I did a story on didn't exist. So, yeah. Colon was founded first before it became magic capital of the world. Colon was around for a few years before Harry Blackstone showed up to donate as the magic capital of the world. I mean, it depends where you live. I mean, it depends who you hear from. What I've heard over the years, the lakes, which if you look on the map, the lakes look like semicolons. So that's what they call it colon for. You got Sturgeon Lake, Palmer Lake. They look like semicolons. So that's why they named it colon for, because of that. That's why it's called Colon, Michigan for, because of the semicolons. Because if you look at a view of Colon, Michigan, the lakes look like semicolons. So that's why colon's called that for. That's what it's called Colon, Michigan for. 2 guys founded Colon, actually. I mean, there's actually two ways Colon was founded, okay? 2 ways. One was because the way the lakes look like semicolons, and the other way is they named it Colon because they were lazy and put their hand in a dictionary. They put their hand in a dictionary, close their eyes, put their finger in a dictionary, and landed in a colon.
and Rena Marie would be 2 of the 31 people who perished from dust.
So it depends. I mean, it's
in Morton County.
so yeah. I mean, it's what counts. That's what happened. I'm not really sure. The historical records are kind of were missing due to a fire. It happened. So yeah, the historical side. Yeah, well, good to the records are missing after the fire we had in after the Great Fire Colon had back in the 30s. A lot of the records are missing because the historical society burnt down in Colon. I mean, they do have a museum in Colon, but it's hardly even open. There's actually 2 museums in Colon right next to each other, but yeah, Magic Week's coming up soon in Colon. Harry Blackstone, he's the founder. He was the head. If you don't know who Harry Blackstone is, I mean, you have to look into that because I don't get into that. That's more of a. I mean, if you don't know who Harry Blackstone is, they teach you who Harry Blackstone is in Colon. If you don't, Harry Blackstone Yeah, he's real poor in Colon. His son was born in Three Rivers. Well, the good news is his son was born in Three Rivers, Michigan. Colon's about 20 miles from Three Rivers. Harry Blackstone, he's a real famous magician. Look him up. Google him. Harry Blackstone, he's real famous. He's so famous, there's a North Blackstone, there's a South Blackstone in Colon. There's two Blackstones. There's a North Blackstone Street and there's a South Blackstone Street. I mean, it depends, because Blackstone, I mean, we have two main streets in Colon. We have State Street and we have Blackstone Street. Or the Blackstone Avenue, I forget, but yeah, on Blackstone is the bank, the library, the Shell, the post office. That's all in Blackstone. It's all in Blackstone. It's all in South Blackstone. The museum is on North Blackstone. Curly's 5-star are on State Street in Colon. Yeah, I've been to the museum. Been to both of them twice. Actually, I actually volunteered at the museum once. Well, I did do a little work for the museum. Like, they needed to move some stuff around. One time I was at the museum, right? They're saying, "Hey, Tyler, can you do us a favor? Can you help us move some stuff around?" I said, "Sure." So I was in the basement helping to move some stuff around for them, and got paid in a pop or water. I got paid in pop in water. So yeah. So yeah, all that hard work for a water, which wasn't bad. So it wasn't that bad. Have you ever been to? No. Well, I never really. I mean, I've been far south as Bowling Green, Kentucky, and far north as Copper Harbor, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan area. Oh, yeah. I've been to a great site a few times. During the 4th of July, there was a. Okay, now this is true. During the 4th of July in Colon, we usually had a parade in Colon. We usually put flowers at the gravestone of the real life flowers at the memorial for the soldiers. Then someone else would come by with a top hat with Blackstone's favorite flowers and put them in front of his grave. And his grave is actually in the middle of the cemetery. Blackstone's grave is in the middle of the cemetery. Then after that, we went over to Leonidas and did the exact same thing. Did a thing over there. Vern Troy is actually buried in Leonidas, Michigan, or Leonidas, if you prefer that. Vern Troy is actually buried in Leonidas, Michigan, which is weird because his mother because he's from Colon. He was buried in Leonidas, Michigan. So yeah, depends. How about? Yeah, I used to go to it. I used to go to it all the time, but when I moved to Three Rivers, I stopped going to it. I used to go to it when I used to live in Colon. I used to go to it every year. Went there every single year, but when I moved out of Colon, I stopped going. So there's no use to me going anymore. I mean, when I went to Colon, I always was dressed I was always dressed pretty good, pretty decent, and I had to make sure I was dressed properly before I even went to downtown. And I had to dress like a local. I had to wear a hat. I had to wear a top hat. That's all I had to do was wear a top hat. Like I said, I used to go to it, but I don't go there anymore. I mean, I haven't been there. I haven't been to the Magic Festival in years. I mean, that was the thing. I went to the Magic Festival, but didn't go to the county fair. That's what I did. I went to the Magic Fest.
Denver, on the French western edge, was covered by a haze.
Wow. No. All metrics I learned, I don't do anymore. From personal experience. I know a couple magic tricks. Yes, I know a few magic tricks, but I don't do anymore. I don't do them anymore. I mean, I'm too old. I don't do magic tricks anymore. I used to work for a ventriloquist. Actually, there's a ventriloquist in Colon over at Fab Magic. I did a little work for him. I did a little bit of work for him for a little bit. I mean, I drew up a quick. He wanted to sketch. He wanted a billboard. He told me, "Hey, I mean, I drew a quick sketch for him." He said, "Yeah, I drew a quick sketch for him, and you know." He wanted me to draw him a quick sketch, so I drew him a quick sketch. But in 5 minutes it was done, and he kind of used it, kind of didn't use it. But yeah, he's a ventriloquist.
But to a person, this one seemed different, bigger, blacker, more sinister.
So yeah, and I mean I know a little bit magic, but not much. I'm a magician, so yeah, I don't know much. But when we do, there has been some stuff we have done over the years that. Did you ever see the man who? Have you ever saw a man? Yeah. I actually seen the blades they use. I actually know a person who actually owns the blades they used. I actually got a chance to hold them. They're quite heavy. But the thing is, though, guys, they're dull. Okay, they're dull. They don't have a point on them. It's the illusion. Because people always want to know what the sawing stuff, like when you stick straws into people and stuff. The proof is those things do exist, but at the angle you have to hold them a certain angle to hide the blades. So no one gets hurt. So yeah.
Trixie Travis Brown's family was at Wolf Creek in the midst of their picnic, 20 miles from home.
Yeah, I went to a couple of ventriloquist shows. I helped at Fab Magic for a little bit during the summertime. I was at Fab Magic working, and he's a ventriloquist. So yeah, I did a little work. I did some work for him. Like one time, he had a box of old magazine stuff. He needed help sorting them out. I helped him sort them out. He need help with this. He need help with that. I helped out a little bit and got paid a couple cents. Which. He does good work. I mean, come on. Colon has a population of like 1,200 people, so everyone knows everybody. It's like Hazard County. Everyone knows everybody.
In Guyman, Oklahoma, the parents of Boots McCoy had dropped him and his sister Ruby Pauline off for Sunday school, promising to pick them up when services were over. Then the storm hit.
They finally stopped the church because it was getting so bad. People were getting up leaving anyway. The pastor excused everybody with a prayer, and they went there. They had a rail. I remember all that rail over Ruby's. She was more scared than I was. So I just took sister and we started off.
Through the darkness, they struggled to make their way home, through back alleys and neighbors' yards, relying on memory more than eyesight. They finally made it home.
Georgia. Hazard County's in Georgia. But I mean, yes, Dukes of Hazzard's in Georgia. Yes. Yeah, Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah. Colon, you live in a small community like Colon, Minden, or Baroque. Oh, Baroque. Population 800. Nice village. Love it there. The problem is they do have a library, but Baroque is real small. I've seen it early before. I've also seen Roscoe's police car too. But I couldn't touch it, but it was behind ropes. But I have seen the Zero Lee. I have also seen the DeLorean. I also have seen a gray DeLorean. actually been in this year. I actually seen a red DeLorean, actually sit in a DeLorean. Seen the 18 van before too. But some idiot deleted off my tablet, so I couldn't upload to YouTube.
Shaw and her husband had not accompanied the caravan of cars headed for Grandma Lou's graveside service. They had remained behind, not wanting
Dearborn, Detroit. Been there too. Rode in a 1930s bus, 1930s Ford bus. Seen an Oscar Mayer wheelbill. Seen Rosa Parks bus. Seen the chair that Lincoln got shot in. Seen the car that Kennedy got shot in. Seen the gas truck from Back to the Future. I mean, not the exact truck, but one just like it. I mean, I went there in 5th grade, which I have no pictures. They also had a big boy there, a big boy. Which, at the time I saw that, yeah, you get right around an old bus from the 30s that cost like 50 cents. Also saw a big boy steam engine, which at the time I didn't even know what it was called until 2 years later. And I found out what they were called, big boys. I thought, wow, I actually saw a real big boy. I mean, you see here, recently, a couple years ago, I rode on a train. I rode on Percy. No, the steam engines. Go on YouTube, type in The Last of the Giants. That's what I'm talking about. Last of the Giants. A steam engine that has a steam engine. Oh, and then you got to think about, then there's Old Maud. She's a triple. Okay, Big Boy is a double. Old Maud's a triple. Old Maud's a triple. Big Boy is a big, beefy. Big Boy's a double, but yeah. Wait, no. Oh, I was wrong. Old Maud was, I think, the first one. Then there's Big Boy, and Big Boy's awesome. I mean, yeah. I mean, just go on YouTube and go to Big Boy, type in Big Boy space steam engine, and you'll see tons of videos of those. I mean, I think there's one in St. Louis still that you can actually go in and ring the bell. Oh, Big Boy is big. I mean, some guy from the Union Pacific named it Big Boy, and it stayed. The restaurant you're thinking of is Bob's Big Boy, and there's like about 60 of those left in the U.S. Headquarters in Michigan. I mean, it depends. Okay, I mean, yeah, Big Boy is one of the biggest steam engines you could buy at the time, and Big Boy is a double, has 2 cylinders. I mean, you know how they have the cylinder makes it go. Big Boy has 4 of those, 2 on each side. They're on the east side. They're on the east side of the state. The last one around here was in Coldwater. That shut down a few years ago. I think it's now Dairy Queen. I'm not sure. Last time I actually went to a Big Boy when I was up north, about 300 miles from Grand Rapids, Michigan. When I was up north. Actually, there is a Bob's Big Boy in Battle Creek. I think there's a Bob's Big Boy near Battle Creek. Actually, I think. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. I'm gonna look it up right now because I actually do not know. Bob's Big Boy.
The Bob's Boy Restaurant at 50,064 South US Highway 131 into Rivers is closed. It has been replaced.
I know that one closed down. Okay, there is one Big Boy left in Battle Creek. There is a Bob's Big Boy in Battle Creek still. Okay, there actually is a Big Boy's in Battle Creek. So that's not bad. Not Petoskey. Higher up in Petoskey, the Upper Peninsula. At the time, I was still living in Colon, so that would have been 12 or maybe, I don't know when, but it was still in Colon. So it had to be from the.
and managed to find shelter in Boise City.
Maybe you could catch.
The story
If I ever do go to Big Boys in Battle Creek, I will. I don't know. It depends on what we do this year. I don't even know. I maybe think. I mean, we were just looking at. I was doing some mapping earlier. Might go to Buc-ee's. We don't know yet. We might go. Or we might just go to Coldwater. We're not sure. We might go to Buc-ee's or we might just go to Coldwater and go to a hotel. I just want to go to a hotel this year. That's what I really want to do. I already saved up money for the hotel. And all I have to do is get some GoPros charged up and we figure out what day we're going. And then I'll be happy.
Anyone had used that term.
Black Sunday is the dirt storm.
If I ever do go back to a Big Boy, I will definitely record it live. Yeah, I definitely go live if I went. Yeah. Yeah, the Big Boy up Battle Creek. I just looked. The 1-3 was shut down about 20 years ago. Is your Adam moved up here? Is your Wayne moved up here? He lived in Colon. A year later, I moved up. About 2 years later, I moved up to Colon. So in 03 or around 03 or 04. I think 03. Yeah, it depends what we're doing. If we go to Buc-ee's, we're gonna have to get a hotel. Or if we just go to Coldwater, we're gonna get a hotel. I mean, I just want to go to a pool. That's it. Go to Shorty's and go to a pool. I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to a hotel here in town. I'm going to a hotel in Coldwater or somewhere else because I'm not going to a hotel here in town. $200. I'm not spending $200 a night at a hotel here in town. I'll go to Coldwater.
In a small house with his family and friends in Pampa, Texas, just south of No Man's Land. His name was Woody Guthrie.
Just for a night. I don't want a whole week. I just want one night at a hotel where I can be in a nice, comfortable pool and hot tub, and that's it. Bless you.
A lot of people in the crowd that was.
I go to Best Western.
They was up for the well on the scriptures, and they said, "Well, boys, girls, friends, and relatives, this is the end. This is the end of the world." And everybody said, "Well, so long, it's been good to know you." I made up a song. So long, it's been good to know you. So
To be continued.
been good to know you.
I'll finish this tomorrow.
Been good to know you. This dusty old dust is a blowing me home. I've got
All hotels you can get free breakfasts. I mean, there was a hotel I went to over in Wayland, long time ago. Had to go to Grand Rapids for something. $50 a night, and it was cheap, but it was pretty good.
I'll sing this song, but I'll sing it again. All the places I lived on the West Texas plain. In the city of
I don't know who it is.
County of Gray. Here's what all of the people there say. Well, it's so long. Been good to know you.
I don't know who that is. I don't think it's Hank. Don't know who it is, but I'm changing it now because I'm done with this. Yeah, the first thing you do with cheap hotels is this. The first thing you do at a cheap hotel is you check for bed bugs. The first thing you do is check for bed bugs. That's the first thing you do is check for bed bugs. Then you work away from there. I mean, we went to a hotel up in Wayland. $50 a night. And the hotel was pretty good. Had decent TV. I mean, had decent cable, decent TV. And I mean, I give them a solid 6 for cheap and comfortable. And the best part was they had signs that lock up your car. Yeah, we locked our car up. No one took our car. Our car was a dump. What do you mean, Tyler? I had an old Dodge. I had an old Dodge. Cars. Yeah. No, the hotel was a decent price. $50 a night. $200 if you want to stay there for a week. It's $200. Walked in. I mean, I looked to see the breakfast. They had breakfast, but the only thing was cereal. But I didn't want no cereal, so I just left. Did what I had to do? I went to a museum. That's it. Nope. I'm gonna go see the news. I'm gonna go see something else. So, gotta go, guys. I'm gonna be back on later. Bye.